Okay, so in this tutorial we're going to be looking at low polygon modelling, modelling a version of Sackboy from Little Big Planet. Just as an introduction to some of the new polygon modelling tools in Max 2010 and how to kind of use as few polygons as possible when creating a model. So the first thing to do is to set up some plans in 3DSMax. And to do this we're going to use this image in Photoshop. So you should be able to find this on Moodle. And the reason we do this is so that when we are modelling in 3DSMax we want to create our concept as accurately as possible. So the normal kind of process is for a concept artist to produce a kind of view like this, normally kind of a lot more detailed obviously with colour and things, but for this demo today this will kind of do. And the concept artist will normally produce this view, the front view, the side view and the rear view if it's a character. If it was something like a vehicle you would obviously have that a lot more accurate and also include a kind of top view in that as well. Other things you normally include in kind of concept sketches is material definitions. So for instance, if you have a character with jeans on, you'll have a close-up of the kind of jeans here and maybe a photo reference, just kind of littered all around the concept, so artists better know what kind of material it is. Okay, so how do we get these plans into 3DSMax? Well, we basically use them as textures. So the way we do that is to come into 3DSMax. In our front view we'll create one plane, and in our side view we'll create another. So we do it at 90 degrees, and then using these two planes we'll put the front of Sackboy on that plane and the side of Sackboy on the side one. Line those up as accurately as possible, and then we can use those as a modelling guide. Okay, so if you come back into Photoshop and come to the rectangular marquee tool here, and making sure you start at the very top and then come down to this line here, just select the front area of Sackboy, and then if you press Ctrl C to copy or edit copy, and then press Ctrl N for new, hit OK, and then Ctrl V to paste or edit paste up there. Then you can save that. As a front view. We use a JPEG in this case. In fact we won't, we'll use a BMP. And I'll call it Sackboy front. And then I'll come back to my blueprint again. Again, making sure I select from the top. Select the side here, image crop, file, save as. Make sure you set to blue to BMP, and we'll save this as Sackboy side. Okay, so we now have our two images. So if we open the material editor, either go to material editor there, or the shortcut on your keyboard is just M. Just a quick note here actually before we carry on. I always work with this lighter UI in Max 2010. This is because like a really important thing about 3DSMax is anything that's kind of turned on or being used is highlighted in yellow. You can see here material editor is open, so it's yellow, and we're in move mode, so that's yellow. The darker UI doesn't have that feature, which kind of really annoys me. If you want to change it, you just go to Customize, Load Custom UI Scheme, pick this path at the top and click on it, and you can just select light from there, and that will load the light one. If you do this once at home it will stay like that forever. In uni you have to do it kind of every time you load the computer. Okay, so back to the tutorial. Select the first material slot, come down to maps here, tick on diffuse, and then in the none slot just select bitmap, and we'll just browse to our folder, and in that one we'll slot Sackboy front, and you can see that's applied the texture to there. So we'll select the front plane here, and if you just hit the assign material to selection button, and then make sure the text is visible by turning on that, and you can see that's now applied. Now what it's done is it's actually stretched our plane, our texture to fit onto the plane. We obviously want to maintain the exact dimensions of our front image here. So if you come to the Modify tab, and in your list of modifiers just add a UVW map, and then in the options you've got bitmap fit. If you just hit that, select the front, you'll see that will make it fit. You can also come back down to your plane here and just tweak the size a little bit if you want, just to make it so that only the Sackboy is shown. Okay, we'll now need to do the same for our side image. So just come to another material slot, maps, tick on diffuse, click on the none tab and select bitmap, and then select side. So we'll apply that texture, make it visible, and again put on a UVW map, bitmap fit, select the side, and we can come down here and just tweak our plane size. And then it's important just to make sure that these kind of line up as best as possible. Also, what you want to do is move the front image to the back, then move the side image to the side, so you end up with something like that. There you go, like so. Now, because nothing is displaying as double-sided here, I also like to clone this image here by going Edit, Clone, make sure it's on copy, and then I just put a normal modifier on it, and that flips it round the other way. You'll need to move it slightly to the side as well. We'll do the same with this one. To copy like I did then, just delete that. If you hold shift, you can just drag and copy. Give you your options here. Again, select copy instead of instance, and apply a normal modifier to that. I just find it a bit easier to work like that. Let's move that back to there, and we'll save that as start. Okay, so we're ready to start modelling. One more thing I like to do actually is freeze all these objects so that I can don't accidentally select these while I'm modelling. And to do that, you select all 4 plans, right click, and you go to freeze selection, and you'll see they'll fade out to grey, so just undo that, right click, go to object properties, and if you tick off show frozen in grey, hit OK, and then hit right click and freeze selection, and now you can't select those, so they won't get in the way when you're modelling. So we'll save that again. We'll just turn off our material editor. Okay, so the way we're going to construct this is by using kind of basic primitives and editing those to get the correct shape for each part. So the first one we're going to do is start with the leg. So we'll use a cylinder for that, since it's the most kind of similar shape to what we're trying to make there. And we'll start in the top view and just make a cylinder. Just a few kind of important shortcuts for you. F3 toggles on, goes between smooth and highlight mode and wireframe mode. To get rid of that grid, if you just hit G, if you're in smooth mode, if you hit F4, that gives you a wireframe around your smooth objects. So those two in particular are very useful, so F3 and F4. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is come to the Modify tab and just use the basic parameters here just to get this as kind of accurate as possible. Now, because we're going for a kind of low polygon detail, we don't need to have all these segments in here. So let's reduce that down to about 8, just so that we've still got a basic kind of shape of a cylinder, but we're not using anywhere near as much detail. Also, with the height segments, we'll just take that down to none for now. Well, sorry, 1. And then we can just add more in later if we do need. Okay, so another thing I like to do actually is a good shortcut is hold Alt and press X, and that will make your model go translucent, and then you can see the plan behind you when you're working. Some people actually like to have a separate material. Let's make invisible again. Apply that, change it to something like green, and then you can reduce the opacity down here and use that. Just gives you a bit more control. It's up to you which kind of technique you'd rather use. Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is add an edit polygon modifier to your object. And once you've added that, just make sure that this option here is turned off. So you don't want that to be highlighted in yellow. Make sure that's turned off. And what it does is it activates kind of shortcuts in within individual modifiers. Like, never use it. Just have that turned off. Make sure it's turned off at home. Once you've turned it off once, you won't need to turn it off again. Okay, so first of all we'll come into vertex mode and select this top row, and we'll just, using scale, shrink them right down. And we'll also rotate a little bit there. We'll just get that to fit as best as possible, using F3 to bring in and F4 to bring in our wire mode. Now I'm just going to scale on the X-axis here, just to widen it but not increase the width. And to do that, I just select the X line here, like so. If I select in the middle, that will make it expand out in all directions. If I just select the Y-axis, it will just expand on X. Up a little bit. Okay, so we've got the basic shape in there, but obviously we need more detail. So to do that, we'll use our graphite modelling tools up here, and if you just select the Swift Loop option while you're in edge mode, then you can just start adding more in. We're definitely going to need one there. So I'll right click to come out of Swift Loop mode, and then let's pull that into there. Again, using scale on the x-axis to just get that to fit. Again, go to Swift Loop, and we'll add in another cut here. Go to scale mode. The way I'm going to scale mode there is with the shortcuts, which is either by right clicking and there's move, rotate, scale here, or I can use W, E and R. W for move, E for rotate, and R for scale. Let's go to scale mode. So, what I'm going to do is go to Swift Loop mode again and add in a cut at the top and a cut on the bottom, so we can make a kind of rounded base of his feet. I'm going to come back to vertex mode. Now the shortcuts for vertex mode, for these sub-objects are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So if you just try those out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I'm in vertex mode, if I hit 1 again, that'll take me out of vertex mode. So I tend to use those a lot, so it just saves you coming up to here. So again, we'll go to vertex mode and select this whole bottom row, and we'll just scale that in a bit there. And then we'll select that whole area up there, rotate it, bring it round. You might want to bring these down a little bit as well. Okay, so we'll come back to my material edge and just raise that up to 100 so we can have a look at the model. And it's pretty well lined up to our plan. It's kind of best we can do on these blueprints. So let's now clone that leg over and make an instance version of it. So up here you've got mirror mode. If you just hit mirror mode, make sure you've got, instead of no clone, go to instance. An instance basically means that if I modify one, it'll affect the other one, and a copy means if I modify one, it won't affect the other one. And then we'll drag that over to there. And you can see we've got our two legs. There's not much detail in these, and we've got a very nice topology as well. There's no random missing edges. Everything's made of quads, and just generally looks good. The one thing we haven't done is set our smoothing groups, but we'll do that once we've finished the entire model. Okay, so the next thing we're going to model is the body area here. And again, there's a couple of shapes we could kind of use as a base for this. It would probably be either a box or a cylinder. I think we'll go for a cylinder though, just because if we look at some reference images of Sackboy, you can see he's got quite a rounded body, and that'd be quite, probably more time consuming to create that roundness than it would be to create the kind of curved edges here. So I think we're best off starting with a cylinder. So in your top view, just click to create the original cylinder here. We'll drag that up, and this time instead of using the texture, we'll use Alt X to make this translucent. Get that as kind of centered as possible. And we'll put that, say, up to there. Again, we'll use scale on the x-axis to shrink in the body area here. Bring down the height a bit there. And since we know we are going to need a few height segments, we'll start with a couple in there straight off the bat. I also think we should increase our sides to 12. We had 8 sides in the leg, but obviously they're smaller than the actual body, so the body should probably have a few more sides in it than the leg. But we also want to maintain that centre line there. So if we had it on 11, we wouldn't have that centre line, and neither with 10, but with 12 we do get that. So again, we put an edit poly modifier on it. You should see all your modelling tools now available up here and to the side. Let's shut that. So we'll come into vertex mode. Remember, you can use one on your keyboard for that. And we'll just drag this row down here. Select that row, go to scale. And we'll pull that into there. Again, sometimes you have to just use your own kind of intuition if your plans aren't revealing exactly the detail available. Now at the moment we can see the legs are kind of getting in the way a bit here, so if you just select both legs, right click and go to hide selection, you've got all your hide options here, and this can be incredibly useful for when you're working with heavy scenes or when you're doing modelling like this. So if you right click and go to hide selection, we can now use this to get that lined up. Again, using scale, wheel. Scale in there. I think we should add in another cut here, maybe to there. Vertex mode. And just scale that right in like there. And just make sure you line it up to plans as best you can. Obviously we can see here the back area sticks out a bit, so I'll make sure I'm scaling on X. Just on X so that it doesn't expand in this view. Then we can see we actually need to kind of make this neck area as well. We could raise that area up there, but instead we're going to use another technique, which is extrude. So if you just select the top polygon here, come to the extrude tool, and you can just click and drag that up. Right click to stop that, press R to go to scale, and then this time we'll scale on both axes, so you can see I'm selecting the bit in the middle here. We'll bring that down, and then again select extrude. We'll extrude that up. Make the neck. Now, obviously, again, just to mention, with plans like this, it's never kind of a precise science, especially when you're working with kind of plans like this. You just have to kind of guesstimate sometimes what the best way to be. A good way to do that is just to save kind of loads of reference images of your kind of subject matter, if you can. So if we look at something like that, we can see it curves in and then curves back out again there. So at the moment it's not kind of curving in enough, so we use Swift Loop to add in another cut there. Select this row here, scale, and just pull that in. So it might be worth bringing that cut down a bit there. Then if you press Alt X to bring back the colour of the object, unhide all, then you can see we've now got legs and a body. You can see when I've created new polygons it hasn't actually smoothed them off. So a quick way just to smooth them, if you just want to see what it's going to look like, is to just drop on just a normal smooth modifier and just tick on auto smooth. Set the threshold higher if it's not doing it correctly, and that should smooth off the entire thing. Okay, we'll save there. And the next thing we'll look at is modelling that zip. Now because it's a low polygon model, if we just hide that, you can see we've got the actual rings of the zip along here as well, but because they're so small, it'll be much better to do those with a texture. The most important thing to think about when doing low poly modelling is the actual silhouette, and a big zip like that will actually make quite a difference to the silhouette, especially on a side-on platform game, so it's very important that we model that in. So to do that, this time we're going to start with a box, and we'll just create a box for this bit here. Now we're going to need two areas to extrude up here, so add in some cuts so we can extrude up there and there, and that should be fine to start with actually. So again, put on an edit poly modifier. Another useful shortcut quickly is just Z. So if I've got an object selected, I press Z, that'll zoom me right into that one object. 1 for vertex mode, and then I'll X to make it translucent. Select those and we'll extrude up. Extrude up one more time, and then select that polygon there and hit delete. Select that one there and hit delete. And if you go to edge mode, select one edge. Okay, I'll do this a different way. If you go to border, just select border, and that will select any kind of open edges in that area. Then if you hold Control and go to edge, and then hold Shift and drag across, it will clone some edges. And then to attach them to the end here, you just go to Target World and just select one edge and then click on the other one, click one edge, click on the other one, just hide unselected. Like so. And they're all connected together. We'll unhide all again and just bring back that. I'm going to have to hide the body now. Bring that down a little bit. sake of symmetry, we'll make sure it's pulled up to there. And the next thing I'm going to do is just use an FFD modifier here. That's freeform deformer, and that just gives you these points to kind of mass edit an object without having to tweak every single vertex. So just like an edit poly, it's got sub-objects, and if I go to control points, I'm going to select the top 4 there, press R to go to scale mode, and just scale that in, like so. Now we haven't got it on the actual plan here, but just give it that extra kind of artistic shape to it. I'm going to also scale it in there, like so. Okay, you can also see he's got a little clip here. So let's have a quick look at how that is. A bit small, this image. Let's try setting our options here to be large. There we go, this will help. So you can see it's a basic clip like that. So we should also model that bit and just kind of use this image as a reference. We'll make another box here. And we have to poke out 2 bits from there, so we'll just have a quick look at it. That should be alright. Again, using edit poly. We'll select those, extrude that out, extrude it out again, delete that polygon there, delete that one there, use border to select that, shift to drag down, then go back to edge mode and use target while to stick everything together. Select. Got to now we've got the basic shape in there. Just got to make it fit properly, like so. And we'll also select those 2, scale, and just. In fact, no, we'll use the same thing we used before, an FFD deformer. Make sure you're on control points. And just pull that down. And we'll put another edit poly modifier on top, so we can edit our object after it's had the freeform deformer affect it. Come into vertex mode, select all of those, and we'll just scale that in. So, and then we just want to give an impression of that shape. Normally you should work with only one half an object, so it's symmetrical on both sides, but in this case we are using one model. So to fix that, I select both parts on each side and then use scale a lot more than I do move, just to make sure that everything's symmetrical. And I might want to pull that bit up there as well. Use my left view here to align with that there. Okay, so we have our zip now. Let's pull that out like so. Shrink that in a little bit. And then just to make sure it's part of the body, we'll pull this section in. So there. We'll go to the body again, go down to edit poly, and we'll just pull these and these two forward a little bit. Like so. So if you do ever lose your kind of model over there, if you just hit Z, that will bring the model back into your viewport. Okay, so we'll save